Now that all the block preparation is complete and we've re-cleaned it, it is time to install the cam bearings, which we had our machine shop do, and we can proceed to install the main studs. When installing the studs, follow the recommendation of the manufacturer. They often change the torque values that they use from the factory. In our case, the factory torque on the main studs would be 75 for the inside studs and 65 for the outside. Our stud manufacturer says that when using a high-quality moly lube, we should only torque all studs to 65 pounds. Also, remember that part of block preparation is to tap, clean all the main holes. Also, they must be washed very thoroughly. If you have completed these steps properly, all it takes to install the studs is to put a generous coating of the moly lube on the bolt and then just screw it in by hand until the shoulder seats against the block. That's all it takes to install the studs. Now that the stud installation is complete, we can install our main caps with the bearings in place, torque them to the proper torque, and measure the diameter of the bearing bore and compare that to the diameter of our crankshaft to see what our main bearing clearance is. To measure the main bearing bore, we'll use our inside mic. Reading the mic, we show 2-inch 651 thousandths. To measure the crankshaft, once again, we'll use our C-clamp mic. And here we're showing 2 inches 648.5 thousandths. That tells us that we have 2.5 thousandths clearance on our main bearings, which is ideal. On an engine like this, on main and rods, you want between 2.5 and 3 thousandths clearance on main and rods. This procedure should be followed for all the main bearings and also for all the rod bearings. For the rod bearings, we'll insert the bearing in the connecting rod, torque it to full spec, and measure it just as we did on this front main. Once again, comparing it to the diameter of the crankshaft journal, we'll arrive at our bearing clearance. Like any other new part, the camshaft has to be inspected for any damages, nicks, burrs, whatever. Also, the bearing journals should be cleaned off lightly with Scotch-Brite, and then the whole camshaft should be washed in clean solvent. Once it's dry, you can lube it and install it. Never forget to also put some of the assembly lube on the distributor drive gear. To make installing the camshaft easier, we've installed 2 5/16 bolts in the end, or you can make up a handle out of bolts and extend it. Anything to give you a little leverage to hold this end will help. We want to take our lube and put a generous amount on each lobe, on the bearing journals, about halfway up the camshaft. Just rub it around the lobe so it doesn't get wiped off somewhere else. You could also leave it off the lobes and apply a small amount to the bottom of the lifter before you put the lifters in. That'll also distribute the lubrication directly to the lobe. We only lubed it halfway up so that we don't make quite a mess of ourselves. When installing the camshaft, always be very careful not to score the bearings with any part of the camshaft. This could give you an internal oil leak and result in premature engine failure. We've also left the rear cam plug out until later so we can reach in and grab the back of the cam to help guide in the last journal. Also, it will aid us when we set up the end plate of the camshaft with a cam button. Once the cam is all the way in the bearings, turn it with the bolts in the front to make sure that it rotates freely. If it binds, the cam should be removed, the problem found and corrected. The camshaft must turn freely in the bearings. Now we can lay the crankshaft in and start setting up our timing gears.